I'm back, and today we're going to finish up the Lord of the Rings reviews and with the Return of the King. And spoilers ahead. Duh. That's just the way I do it. So this is again the extended version, and more than any of the first two, or even the Hobbit movies, I would say, this one you cannot watch the theatrical release and understand everything that's going on. They cut way too much out to make it theatrical, and they added about almost an hour in to the movie itself for this version. So you have got to watch this. If you are a fan of Lord of the Rings and you have not watched the extended version, you have to watch this. This will answer every single question that might pop up in your head while you're watching the theatrical movie, even the questions you don't think are there. So, that being said, this is like this. Yeah, this is awesome. So, we get the story started off again. We got Sam and Frodo and Gollum off doing their thing. We got the rest of the crew off doing their other thing. The main crew ends up going to Saruman, and this is one thing that they changed, and I did not like this. But you only see this in the theatrical version, in the extended version. The theatrical version, they get to Saruman's tower, and Gandalf says, "Okay, that's where he needs to stay." In the theatrical, you get Gandalf versus Saruman again, kinda. So Saruman's like, "Okay, I lost. I'm willing to talk to you about things. Let's do this." And, there's kind of an exchange there. Theoden's pissed off. And then Grimer gets really pissed off and stabs Saruman in the back, killing him and dropping him off the tower. And then Legolas kills Grimer. Now, in the books, they both get out and they rebuild an orc army and start up in the Shire. So when Sam gets back from the whole quest, he ends up having to free the Shire from Saruman, and then Grimer kills Saruman, and everyone lives happily ever after. But I think that was, he wanted to tie up that loose end right there, but I think it really detract from Sam's story at the end of the books. That would have been hard for them to add in to this movie, but they could have made a whole nother movie about this if they really wanted to, and just took a whole bunch of liberties on that. Now, like I said, it was one of those whatever. I guess what's done is done. But after Saruman dies, they find out that he had one of the Palantirs, the little orbs, seeing stones. He had one of those, and then Pippin finds it, and he instantly gets like, "Oh, I want this." So later on that night, he grabs it, and Sauron figures out where he's at, and everyone's focused on there. So Gandalf's like, "Okay, we got to get him out of here because everyone's going to come after him, and we got to get to Gondor because now that Saruman's dead, Sauron's going to send everything he has at Gondor to destroy it." And that's exactly what he does. So you get Aragorn on one end, and he's with Theoden, and they're trying to raise as big of an army as they can to go help Gondor. You got Sam and Frodo still trying to sneak into Mordor. And now you got Gandalf in Gondor, and he's trying to rally the troops there. And, of course, the steward doesn't believe him because he's a fucking idiot. Seriously. I said this in the last review. Why the fuck do you not listen to Gandalf? This is not me insulting the movies. This is me insulting the characters because, yes, some people would do that. And usually the people in power are the ones that do that, which is awesome, right? So, we got all that going on. Stewart doesn't believe Gandalf. Pippin ends up joining the Citadel Guard. which of course now he's scared. And then you get this giant beam from Mordor. I can't remember the name of that town. Anyway, you get this giant beam fly up, and then you see the Witch King. This is what I've been waiting for all three movies, is the fucking Witch King. He's absolutely my favorite of the Nazgul, and of all the villains in this movie, in all of these movies, he's my favorite. He's, huge figure for me growing up. I loved him. I guess that kind of explains a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, so he flies in, and it is just awesome. He's leading this army of orcs, and like I said, I mean, they look like the regular orcs. So the, a few of them is not that intimidating, but the size of army that he leads, with the help of Gothmog, is just beyond reasoning. I mean, it is huge. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of these orcs marching in against, a few hundred men, or maybe a couple thousand men. But I mean, thousands, hundreds of thousands of these orcs are just piling out, and this army is huge. I mean, if you watch this and you see that army all readied up in the battlefield, you'll understand that this is it. This is the army. And so he goes there and they attack and they just decimate things. Now this is where Peter Jackson took a few more liberties. Like Gothmog, the character itself, he wasn't in the books. So they add him in, and he's leading these armies, and the Nazgul are flying around and swooping down and attacking people from the city. Now that's something that didn't really happen in the books. There was some catapult battles going on and stuff like that, but the Nazguls weren't sweeping around. They were definitely there to kind of seek out champions in the battlefield and take them out, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're the champions of the orc army. So that didn't really happen, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with this in the movie. It was not something that I was really like, I don't like this. Then you get the breaching of the gate with Grond, the big wolf's head battering ram, which was forged in Mount Doom, like the ring. So intimidating right there. And just covered in spells by the Witch King. So this thing goes down there and it destroys the main gate. Now this is one thing that I didn't like that they changed, was after they destroyed the gate in the movie, a whole bunch of Mordor trolls, armored Mordor trolls, pour in, and everyone's like, oh my god, they're trying to fight the best they can. In the book, the gates get broken down and nothing pours in aside from the Witch King, who casually strolls into Gondor, into Minas Tirith. He just strolls in there on a horse, just kind of like, oh, yeah. And that was one of those, and that's when he has this exchange with Gandalf about how it's done, you're done, it's over, I win. And that was one of those scenes in the book that was just like so intimidating and made such an iconic villain. Changing that did affect that portion of the movie for me. That'd be like, let's see here. I'm trying to think of a good thing to point out. Yep, brain fart. It would be like that final battle between Optimus and Megatron in the original animated movie. And right before they're going to have that exchange, Megatron takes a step back and a bunch of Reflector jumps in. it wouldn't be the same. It's not the same. It just wouldn't work that way. So Witch King should have been the first one to walk into Minas Tirith. That would have been awesome. But they changed it to trolls, and it's like, okay, let's not focus on that too much. And then they battle through the city and stuff like that. But see, that also was when the Riders of Rohan were first showing up in the book. So instead, the orcs just kind of have their way with Minas Tirith for a while, and then Gandalf is riding up to the top, and that's when the Witch King does come in the movie, and has this exchange with Gandalf, just like, okay, it's my time now. You're defeated, old man. And destroys Gandalf's staff, which was pretty awesome. And it's the wizard staffs in the Lord of the Rings are the really important parts of their magic. So just to see the Witch King just like smash it, and then his sword like engulfs in flames, it was just, I love it. And then of course the Riders of Rohan show up, and they mow through a bunch of the orcs. Witch King's like, okay, new threat. I gotta go take care of this because this guy, he's done. I've defeated this city. It's over. All we gotta do is clean up. So he rides up. He flies out into the main battlefield, and the Riders of Rohan are doing really good against the orcs. But that's when the elephants come in, and they just mow down so many people. It is just insane. And I don't remember this part in the book, so I don't know if that was supposed to happen. But if it did, I really enjoy him adding that in. If it did, then he did a good job adding that in. It was awesome. And, the riders, every now and then they get one of the elephants down, but these elephants are just plowing through them, and it's just brutal. I mean, there's horses and people flying everywhere. It's just very entertaining war scene. And then they start rallying, okay, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do this, we're going to do it right at the end. It's like, all right, we've got to rally, and then all of a sudden the Witch King comes down and kills him. It's just like, oh shit. And of course, his niece comes out. They have a battle, which he beats the shit out of her for a while. But then he gets stabbed in the back by Merry, and then she's able to kill him. Which, was really cool, because that's how it happened in the books. I thought it was a really great scene, a lot of fun. It just showed how powerful the Witch King was, and just how getting knifed in the back with an elven blade and then getting your head chopped off would kill you. So it was really good. And then Aragorn shows up. He's been off with the sword that cut the ring off of Sauron's finger. I kept getting... Every time I want to say Saruman, I say Sauron. And every time I say Sauron, I say Saruman. Anyway, he shows up. He's been out gathering a ghost army. A bunch of... essentially, they're wraiths in their own right. And he leads them into Gondor and saves the city. And yeah, it was a great scene. Again, you get... Like, the exchange with Gandalf was not in the theatrical release. Most of the scene where he's rallying the wraiths to come fight for him, and when they took over the Corsair ships, again, not in the theatrical release. These were critical scenes to this movie. So yeah, they were cut out. But I mean, honestly, there was not a whole lot you couldn't cut out of these movies. And I'm leaving a lot out for this review, too. Sam and Frodo, they get attacked by... Sam leaves because Gollum tricked Frodo. He gets attacked by Shelob, the giant spider thing. And he gets away, but then gets stung at the last second, and then orcs take him over, and then the orcs fight over all his gear. Samwise saves the day, and everybody's happy. And then they start moving back towards Gollum, to Mount Doom. Gollum's presumed dead. Yeah, it was a great move, or great parts of the movie. But after they hide in a bunch of goblin armor and start moving through Mordor. But again, there's a scene here where it was cut out of the theatrical release, and this is something that happened in the book too, where they're making some good progress, but then they get caught by a bunch of orc, and they have to march all the way back. All this distance they came, they had to march all the way back in goblin armor, and Frodo's already weak. So that was one of those things that I thought was a very critical thing. And then later on, they get away, they get closer, and they're able to finally get to Mount Doom. But it's just one of those parts that, it really showed how exhausted Frodo was, and by the end of that, and you don't get that quite as well in the theatrical release. So they get to Mount Doom, and then they get into a fight with Gollum, and they're bouncing back and forth, stuff like that. And then we go back over to Aragorn, who's like, okay, we're not going to win this fight. We can't. But we can give Frodo a chance to destroy the ring. If we destroy the ring, then we can win this fight. So he decides, okay, everybody, we're going to band together, we're going to go over there, and we're going to attack the Black Gates. The Tower of the Teeth, as they're called. And again, here's a scene that was cut out of the theatrical release that was put back into the extended version, and that was the Mouth of Sauron, which is, again, an incredibly critical point to this movie, because they have an exchange between Aragorn and the Mouth of Sauron. And the Mouth of Sauron is over there like, hey, look, we've got the hobbits. We already won. This battle is over. And that's why everyone's all like devastated right before they went into battle. And then they rally, especially the hobbits. And so Aragorn gets pissed off and cuts off Mouth of Sauron's head. And then thus the battle begins. And they all have this big battle right in the front of the teeth. Tower of the Teeth. During the battle, there's trolls there. The eagles show up. They start helping out fighting the Nazgul. And then all of a sudden, Sauron's eye turns back over to Mount Doom because Frodo put the ring on. Because he's like, you know what? I'm not going to destroy this ring. I'm just going to keep it for myself. So he puts it back on. And then he gets in a fight with Gollum. Of course, Gollum bites his finger off and falls into Mount Doom, destroying the ring. And then the eagles come by and save the day at the last minute. Which is all pretty much how it happened. I don't recall the orc army getting the ground broken up from under them, but it was just kind of wrapping up loose ends, I suppose. And then you get the like umpteen billion endings, and everybody made fun of it. I think it needed the way the endings worked, how it's like, okay, it would fade back in and then fade out. It's like, okay, the movie's over, then fade back in, do a few things, and then fade out, fade back in, on and on and on like that. But honestly, in the end, I think the endings were necessary. The way they worked it, I think it worked very well for this movie to be the end of the trilogy, and quite frankly, this is one movie. This is not three movies. It wasn't. The books were written as one book. But the publisher told Tolkien, like, hey, this is going to be really hard to sell this kind of a book all at once. And they basically made him split it into 3 sections. So, yeah, it was made to be one book. This movie was filmed all at the same time. So it's designed to be one movie, not 3 movies. Yes, of course, you know, he released it in 3 separate movies, but at the end of the day, it is one movie. So Return of the King by itself is by far my favorite movie of all time. Give it, I have a hard time giving it a 10 out of 10 because I think it deserves more. It is an absolute cinematic masterpiece, in my opinion. Again, my opinion. I love Dark Knight. I love Transformers. I love Avengers and most of the Marvel movies. No questions there. Those are all really, really great movies. But Return of the King tops them all. It's always funny how, you know, if you come up to me on the street and catch me off guard and ask me what my favorite movie is, it's whatever movie I was thinking of at the time. You know, it's like, or like, okay, right now, if you were to ask me on the street, I'd probably say Winter Soldier because that was the most recent movie that I saw that was incredible. And that's because I never think of The Lord of the Rings in terms of good movies. They're above that to me. Like, if you were to ask me what my favorite band is, I'd say, you know, Amon Amarth, Devil Driver, stuff like that. But at the very end of the day, it's Metallica. And I think I hold Metallica in such a high regard that I don't even put them in a classification of favorites. They're above favorite for me. So this movie is above that. So, in my opinion, it's the best trilogy of all time. I'm sorry, all you Star Wars fans out there. This beats Star Wars. Hell, you know, the awards and the money that the Return of the King made, I think, is more than all 3 of the original Star Wars put together. Think about that. Or close to it. So the 3 of them put together, I mean, it is just massive when you really think about it. And the book, the Lord of the Rings book, which, you know, I've got the 50th anniversary edition, that has actual one book, the way it was meant to be. The way it was meant to be. I mean, hell, it's got the little gold shiny things like the Bible. This is. This is the 2nd best-selling novel of all time. Not just, it's probably the most iconic one in the past 100 years. A lot of other books are up there too, but you can't say, this is, for me, I mean, these are just straight up facts. These are like the highest, like, critiqued, like the best critiqued books and movies put together, and financially they're some of the best successful, and just overall one of the most important things that have happened in fiction in centuries. Really think about this for a second. If the Lord of the Rings, and this is me just kind of going off on a rant now, so if you guys are done, you've watched my review of Return of the King, which I gave 10 out of 10, you can go, unless you want to hear me rant on this. But if this book never came into being, if this and The Hobbit, because The Hobbit led to this, if they never happened, in the 70s, very clearly Dungeons and Dragons never would have become popular. That was a paper-based mini and / mini game where they would use little mini models like this. I do have a bunch. I was actually going through a bunch of D&D stuff I have laying around. So it would not have led to Dungeons and Dragons. So imagine the world without Dungeons and Dragons. First imagine the world without Lord of the Rings, and you think, okay, we miss out on great books and great movies. Okay, well, now D&D was clearly, even though the creators kept saying that it wasn't, it was very clearly based off of the Lord of the Rings idea. So you take D&D out. I was like, okay, so D&D, there was a couple bad movies, some cool minis, okay, whatever. Well, D&D also influenced Warhammer. Now, a lot of people have heard of Warhammer, well, because they're still pretty popular. Both Warhammer, which then led to Warhammer 40K, which is very interesting because now Warhammer Games Workshop does Lord of the Rings models. So it's kind of full circle on that one. They never would have been... they never would have come into existence if it wasn't for D&D and Lord of the Rings. From Warhammer, they teamed up with Blizzard to make... they were trying to make a Warhammer game, and it got scrapped at the last minute and turned into Warcraft. And if you don't know where Warcraft ends up, then obviously you're not a geek in the world. But essentially it turned into the World of Warcraft, which is one of the biggest selling online, probably the biggest online game of all time. No arguments there. I don't play it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I will never sit here and say, well, that's a terrible game, because there are billions of people that would kill me. I just don't have a computer for it. Otherwise, I probably would. And I just don't want to spend that kind of money just sitting in front of the computer. That's just not me. I want to do something more hands-on, personally. Anyway, so you take stuff like that. One of my other favorite book series is The Sword of Truth, which is a fantasy book. They would never have been made if it wasn't for Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's very clear there's influence there on Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter, which is a huge thing right now. Or at least it was while the movies were coming out. I know a lot of people really like Harry Potter, but Harry Potter is based in fantasy. If it wasn't for Tolkien's reinvention of the fantasy genre, we wouldn't have Harry Potter. Again, that's something I kind of gave it a shot, but not that much. Other things influenced by Lord of the Rings, and they came right out and said it. Black Sabbath, the grandfathers of metal, Led Zeppelin, the father of rock. Let's see, Amon Amarth, which is, I believe, Elven for Mount Doom, Viking metal, which is awesome. Love it. And on and on and on. Music, actors, Christopher Lee, who played Saruman, and Ian McKellar, who played Gandalf. They both said that was one of their biggest influences growing up, and that's probably the main reason why they were in these movies, is because they're like huge fanboys. Actors, movies. You think of anything that's fantasy related right now, and unless it's just knights and dragons, it probably wouldn't exist without Lord of the Rings. So that's why I say this is my favorite movie series, favorite book series. There's no rating high enough in my little rating guide to give them, because they are beyond rateable for me. So my question of the day is, what are your thoughts on the Lord of the Rings series, both book and movies? Do you guys enjoy them? Are you fans? Or do you at least respect them for what they did for the fantasy genre? Or do you hate them with every fiber of your being and think that they're stealing the thunder from Star Wars because they have a better trilogy? Sorry, but they do. The Hobbit was a prequel trilogy and had infinitely better than the Star Wars prequel trilogies. So just think of that for a minute. And of course, Happy New Year. This movie's going up New Year's Eve, so I hope everybody's being safe, and we'll take a look at Soundwave tomorrow. So looking forward to that. Finally get him reviewed and be able to put him on my shelf. I'm tired of having my Masterpiece figures sitting in a box over by my reviews, because I don't like putting them on my shelves until I review them. It's a pet peeve. So anyway, Happy New Year. See you in 2015.